The year is 2007. Irreplaceable by Beyonce is topping the charts. Steve Jobs invented the iPhone. And your parents are one argument away from getting a divorce due to the upcoming recession. We were also experiencing a massive internet boom. Now more than ever, people were able to connect to the internet and play games, listen to music, and socialize with people all around the world. Because of this, gaming culture was exploding in popularity. Console games are bringing the shooter genre into the mainstream with titles like Call of Duty and Halo blowing up. However, PC games were bringing something else into the mainstream, a genre of game that the whole world was just kind of experiencing in peak form. That genre of games, of course, being MMORPGs, or massive multiplayer online role-playing games. There was plenty of MMOs on the market at this time, but there was no doubt that there were two massive leaders in the genre: Runescape and World of Warcraft. These two MMOs would revolutionize the scene for years to come, but there was something brewing in the MMO community, a hot topic that couldn't be settled by many. In fact, even to this day, 18 years later, people are still talking about it. The ultimate question: which MMO is better, Runescape or World of Warcraft? Now, before we dive into the main topic of this video, being old school RuneScape versus World of Warcraft, it's important that we go over the history of these legendary titans in the industry, because this battle has been raging forever in the community. Let's break it down. Now, before I get into this historic beef, I want to give anyone who is new to the channel a brief rundown of my history as an MMO gooner, so you know that the opinions and ideas that you're hearing today are coming from someone who has been playing this genre since I was a kid. I have been playing RuneScape since 2004 and have hundreds of days played in the game. Yes, days. I started with RuneScape, then transitioned to World of Warcraft in 2006, which I have hundreds of days played in as well. I mained these two MMOs until New World came out, which I was actually able to make a whole Twitch career out of from streaming in the last 3 to 4 years. So it is safe to say that I'm a veteran in the genre, and my thoughts are coming from a place of experience. So now that the intro and my accolades are out of the way, let's jump into the meat and potatoes of this video: RuneScape versus World of Warcraft. Before we get into the trending topic of old school RuneScape versus WoW today, let's first discuss the origin and history of when this beef first began, and go over why these two MMOs stand out and are even good in the first place. RuneScape was developed and published by Jagex in January of 2001. Originally built with Java, this version of RuneScape might look a little different than the RuneScape that you all know and love today. Believe it or not, at the time, this was revolutionary. Being able to explore the world of Gelinor felt magical. You were able to quest, fight monsters, explore different cities, and customize your avatar. For 2001, this was huge. RuneScape got a lot of attention, and for good reason. It didn't know it yet, but this version of RuneScape was the foundation for what's to come. During this time, Blizzard was busy working on all of their other extremely popular titles. Warcraft, Diablo, and StarCraft were exploding in popularity. Blizzard wasn't dumb though. Behind the scenes, they saw that there was an opportunity in the market with the MMO genre, and they wanted to capitalize on it. Blizzard publicly announced in September of 2001 that they too will be releasing an MMO in the years to come. Before I continue, I do think it's important to point something out here. Jagex and Blizzard were by no means equals at this time. Blizzard was already a massive gaming studio with huge hit titles under their belt, while Jagex was a small studio founded by a couple of brothers, with RuneScape being their flagship title. Just something to think about as the video continues. Jagex had something cooking as well though. As more and more people started playing RuneScape, the brother duo behind Jagex began working on a newer version of RuneScape called RuneScape 2. Very creative, I know. RuneScape 2 is made to have three-dimensional graphics, a big step up from the 2D graphics that the first RuneScape had. A beta version of RuneScape 2 was released to members beginning on December 1st, 2003 and ending and fully releasing on March 29th, 2004. Ironically enough, they dropped the RuneScape 2 title for it and decided to name it RuneScape instead, keeping the first version of RuneScape online and under the name of RuneScape Classic. On a side note, RuneScape Classic, or RS1, was officially shut down on August 6, 2018. The newer version of RuneScape proved to be a massive success. The 3D graphics was a huge selling point to consumers. Not only did the graphics change, but the content felt better than ever. In 2004, RuneScape peaked around a 90,000 player count, a huge accomplishment for such a small team of gamers pouring their hearts into something they love. While Jagex was beginning to hit its stride and start the golden age for RuneScape, Blizzard was smelling blood in the water and wanted a piece of that sweet MMO player base pie. In that same year, the gaming powerhouse behind Blizzard finally dropped it, the legendary and long-awaited World of Warcraft. Officially releasing on November 23, 2004, World of Warcraft was like a gaming nuke to the MMO and PC community. Although numbers might not be completely accurate, it is estimated that on release, World of Warcraft had almost 250,000 players, almost tripling what RuneScape's peak in 2004 was. It truly did feel like a David versus Goliath battle at the time, Jagex being the small indie studio and Blizzard being a leading titan in the industry. The odds were stacked against them, but remember, this is still just the beginning. Things were going to get nasty. RuneScape and WoW were both about to explode in popularity. A new rivalry was born, RuneScape versus World of Warcraft. And it wasn't just the companies that were going head to head either. The community was as well. Let's get into what I call the golden age of RuneScape and World of Warcraft. 2005 is here and the numbers aren't even close. By the end of 2005, World of Warcraft was pushing roughly 3 to 5 million subscribers. Yes, you heard me right, millions of subscribers. This isn't just players, these are people paying to play. While finding the exact numbers can be difficult, it's believed that there was roughly 100 to 200,000 active players on RuneScape at this time. The numbers weren't even close, and at the time, it's not very surprising. This trend continued as 2006 rolled around and Blizzard began hitting new highs. Then something happened that the world wasn't ready for, that a young me wasn't ready for. Make Love Not Warcraft, a South Park episode released on October 4th, 2006, made by the legendary Matt Stone and Trey Parker. South Park was an insanely popular adult animated kids show that was hitting huge highs around this time as well. Admittedly, as a kid, I was playing RuneScape up until this point, up until this episode came out. This episode changed my life. I never thought in a million years I would say a show that has a towel smoking grass all the time and a talking Christmas turd would change my life, but it really did. Ironically enough, during this time, my dad was about to buy us a family computer for the house, so a young me was very excited. A week after that episode came out, we went to Best Buy and I begged my dad for World of Warcraft. He got it for me, but I will never forget what the Best Buy worker told us. This game will get you addicted to it. And it sure did. Make Love Not Warcraft was a massive success. It was so good that it literally won an Emmy. It was also a massive marketing success as well. Kids and people like me around the world went out and bought World of Warcraft in droves because of this episode. I can't emphasize how much influence this episode had on me as a kid, so it feels very full circle to be talking about it now as a 30-year-old adult. Catch me saying, "Mom, bathroom," to this day. It felt like World of Warcraft was taking a convincing lead in the conversation. This didn't mean much to the real MMO GigaChad community though, and it didn't stop people from enjoying Runescape. Runescape always had a steady player base, and in 2006 had one of the most infamous incidents in gaming history: the Falador Massacre. This topic has been covered extensively, so I'll just give you a brief summary. On June 6, 2006, there was an infamous glitch that allowed players to attack and kill other players in non-PvP zones, leading to something out of a horror film. Poor, innocent, unsuspecting players in Falador began getting slaughtered by other players abusing the glitch, most notoriously Duriel1321. Panic ensued and people began logging out, running away, and panicking. However, it was like watching a car crash. Some players couldn't look away. Players began recording the event, and it is now one of, if not the most memorable moments to ever happen in RuneScape's history. RuneScape was doing well and had a consistent player base, but at this time World of Warcraft was dominating and it felt like RuneScape was just a secondary game. World of Warcraft is where you had to be, and Blizzard had the numbers to prove it. As 2006 ended and 2007 was around the corner, World of Warcraft was peaking around 6 to 8 million subscribers, leaving RuneScape in the dust. The momentum was in favor for a while, but Jagex did not let that stop them. In 2007, RuneScape underwent significant changes, including graphical updates, the addition of new skills like summoning, and changes to PvP combat in the wilderness. This did bring some hype and love to the game at the time, but Blizzard had dropped a bomb at the start of the year. Blizzard released The Burning Crusade, and it was a huge success. More raids, more battlegrounds, no social life, no girlfriends, only World of Warcraft. And the MMO community felt that too. Everybody was playing World of Warcraft and it wasn't even close. Videos started popping up on YouTube around this time begging the question, what's better, RuneScape or World of Warcraft? RuneScape, of course, had people in its corner saying that the game was better. However, it felt like that crowd was so quiet compared to the loud gigachads that were the World of Warcraft community. All roads led to World of Warcraft, and if you thought otherwise, you were wrong. More videos of people comparing the game's combat began flooding the internet, and a lot of it was just dunking on RuneScape. What's wild is around this time, World of Warcraft hadn't even hit its peak yet.
Peaked? Peaked, D? Let me tell you something. I haven't even begun to peak. And when I do peak, you'll know. Because I'm gonna peak so hard that everybody in Philadelphia is gonna feel it. I'm in my prime.
The Wrath of the Lich King was around the corner, and it felt like the whole gaming community was waiting for this. Hell, even the commercials for this expansion pack were legendary. These commercials are still quoted by gamers to this day. After some grade A promotion once again by Blizzard, the world held its breath as Wrath of the Lich King was soon to be released. And on November 13, 2008, Wrath of the Lich King released to the public, and it was everything it was hyped up to be. Wrath of the Lich King is hailed to be the best expansion that World of Warcraft has ever had. And the numbers don't lie either. For the first and only time ever during this expansion, World of Warcraft broke 12 million subscribers in 2010. Blizzard and World of Warcraft players celebrated as everyone played nothing but Lich King day and night, non-stop, my teen self included. It felt like nothing could stop Blizzard. World of Warcraft is popping off, but RuneScape wasn't doing too bad themselves. Some rough reports and numbers show that RuneScape in 2010 was averaging 6 to 10 million active players. However, this number is supposedly massively skewed due to the overwhelming bot problem that Jagex had, and still has to this day. There was speculation that 60% of that number could have been bots. And that wouldn't surprise me. RuneScape has a free-to-play model, making it easy for bots to get in, but all of the WoW hype didn't affect RuneScape's community. People still enjoyed RuneScape even if they never saw the numbers that WoW had. But still, at this time in the public's eye, World of Warcraft was dominating the RuneScape versus WoW debate. After the Golden Age comes a bit of a downward trend for both of these MMOs. You can only be on top for so long until you inevitably start to slump and steady out. We are going to be getting into what I am going to be calling the Dark Age for both of these games. Lich King was a massive success for Blizzard and they wanted to keep that hype going. Blizzard thought at this time that it was best to really switch the game up, do something the world of Azeroth has never seen before. World of Warcraft Cataclysm was released December 7, 2010 with mixed reviews. The main focus of this expansion was to rework almost every zone in Azeroth, meaning iconic zones that people grew up playing and loving like Westfall and the Barrens got a complete overhaul. In doing so, they also revamped questing entirely. Traditional WoW leveling felt more sandbox and free range, while the new questing in Cata felt more guided and hand-holding. Unsurprisingly, this split the player base. Some people were thrilled about exploring the newer versions of the old zones, while others hated the switch up and didn't want to see their favorite zones completely change. However, again, numbers do not lie. WoW had 12 million subscriptions at the start of Cataclysm, and by the end of it was down to 9 million subscriptions. Still, nothing to scoff at, but it is the start of the downward trend for World of Warcraft for the first time in its history. During this time, RuneScape was steady with their player base with not too many changes coming to the game. From adding a few new bosses and reworking systems they had already in place like the Wilderness, not too much was different in RuneScape. However, on October 25th, 2011, Bot Nuke Day was announced. This was a huge update to try and combat the massive bot problem that RuneScape had. It was told around this time bots were almost 40% of the player base. Microtransactions were added around 2012, and that was a huge problem in the RuneScape community as well. Throughout these years, RuneScape's player base steadily declined. People were not fans of the changes, and it felt like RuneScape lost its touch. It was trying too hard to become something different when the core RuneScape community just wanted the RuneScape they fell in love with. Admittedly, the conversation between WoW and RuneScape was very low-key at these times, as MMORPGs as a whole was taking a backseat in the mainstream. A genre called MOBAs began to pop off, and the main conversation became Dota versus League of Legends. Next, we will be going over what I call the transitional period for both of these games. Jagex did something on February 13, 2013 that would change everything when old school RuneScape officially launched. It began as an August 2007 version of the game RuneScape. Jagex and most people consider this to be the best version of RuneScape. Not only was it in the 2007 version everyone knew and loved, but Jagex also promised to continue to add updates to the game, which they did follow through with. This was a massive step not only for Jagex, but for the MMO genre as a whole, as in the future we will see more MMOs releasing classic versions of itself. This was a massive success. Players everywhere jumped into play, some for nostalgia and some taking it more seriously. Even I around this time jumped back into RuneScape and was beyond thrilled to play again. At the time I was a senior in high school, much older than that wee little Willie that was playing back in the second grade. I was getting to experience the game all over again and found myself falling back in love with a game that I grew up playing. At first it was nostalgia, but now that I was older, I realized the true potential RuneScape had. I wasn't just chopping goblins' heads off in Lumbee, I was doing the quests I never got around to. I was gonna do the fire cape this time. I was gonna buy me a new girlfriend. Life was great. During this time, World of Warcraft was releasing some very hit and miss expansions. On September 25th, 2012, Mists of Pandaria came out and was met once again with mixed reviews. Everyone was calling it the Kung Fu Panda expansion due to the monk class and Pandarian race releasing. Most people were not taking it seriously due to the subject matter of the content. However, people who got to the late game did say that raiding in PvP was fun and better than previous expansions. Don't let this awesome cinematic fool you. Warlords of Draenor then came out on November 13, 2014 and was hailed as World of Warcraft's worst stinker expansion yet. It was considered a disappointing expansion due to several factors, including a lack of content, a flawed garrison system, and a poorly executed story. The expansion also suffered from a long content drought, with only one major content patch releasing in its 2-year lifespan. This expansion almost made me lose all faith in Blizzard personally. Luckily, I got the faith back once World of Warcraft Legion came out on August 29th, 2016. Legion is widely considered a great expansion due to its engaging story, strong class identity focus, and introduction of popular features like Mythic Plus dungeons and class-specific artifact weapons and order halls. I personally love this expansion and have very fond memories of doing the raids and exploring the world with my brother. Sadly, they could not keep up with this trend as World of Warcraft Battle for Azeroth released on August 14th, 2018 and was met with once again negative reviews. While it had some initial positive reception for its zone design, art, and music, particularly the Kultiris zones, the core gameplay and systems at endgame were widely criticized. Many players felt the expansion introduced tedious grinds, particularly the reliance on borrowed power systems like Azerite and Essences, which felt repetitive and unrewarding. Even though the majority of players did not like this expansion, I personally did. While Blizzard was releasing expansion after expansion, trying to keep that spark alive for the WoW community, RuneScape players were eating good, as Jagex continued to expand on the old school RuneScape model. It was then that Blizzard would bite the bullet and release World of Warcraft Classic on August 26, 2019, once again sparking the old school RuneScape versus World of Warcraft debate that we see to this day. Before we fully dive into the modern day rivalry of these titans, it would be wrong of me to not bring up the fact that Blizzard shut down a private server called Nostalrius. This was a private server of players from the World of Warcraft community playing WoW in its classic original form. This caused a massive shockwave and undoubtedly played a role into Blizzard releasing WoW Classic. Clearly, it was in demand as over 100,000 players were playing concurrently on launch of the server. That being said, Blizzard was riding a high as World of Warcraft Classic released and was a massive success. Similar to old school RuneScape, players were able to play on the vanilla version of WoW. Blizzard would even then release the expansions in order like they did in the past, starting with TBC, Lich King, etc. Now you could play the retail version of the game while being able to play the Classic version as well. Classic gained more and more popularity while retail began to fall off a little. Shadowlands, Dragonflight, and The War Within were all expansions released after Classic WoW. For the sake of not repeating myself too much, the retail expansions fed the normal audience of WoW players that still enjoyed retail, while the Classic version fed the crowd of nostalgic boomers like myself. Although, Classic isn't just played for nostalgia reasons and in my opinion is the better version of World of Warcraft. So here we are in the present day. Both companies have their retail versions of the game and both have their classic versions of the game. But Classic WoW came out in the year 2019 and OSRS came out in 2013. Why is the battle between OSRS and WoW popping up again in the big year of 2025? Let's go over it. I also want to bring up the fact that both games had their own versions of Hardcore or Iron Man in their games. OSRS had a mode called Iron Man that did take the gaming scene by storms, meaning you were not allowed to trade other players or access the Grand Exchange. Then proceeded to add Hardcore Iron Man, introducing a not allowed to die play model to it. And even going as far to add Ultimate Hardcore Iron Man, making it even more challenging as players forfeited their banks and only had their inventories. While this was trending, players began playing a hardcore version of World of Warcraft using add-ons. Blizzard saw this and in true Blizzard fashion, took it and made it theirs. They released a hardcore version of World of Warcraft. And just like RuneScape, it was a massive success. So much so that a streamer community guild was formed called OnlyFangs. Streamers from different gaming backgrounds came together to play hardcore WoW, and the content was overwhelming. Just like any guild, there was raids, dungeons, PvP, and of course, drama. I think personally that both Jagex and Blizzard did a fantastic job with their Iron Man and hardcore versions of the game. I would say that both were successful, and in the debate of OSRS versus WoW, both score a point for me here, although some would surely disagree. Over the years, WoW has seen many different versions of the game. From new expansions to new versions of the game like Classic and SOD, while this is good overall when it comes to having content and stuff to do, it splits the player base, and at times, the WoW community doesn't feel as close. On the other hand, you have the old school Runescape community, where yes, there may be pretty much only one version of the game. If we forget RuneScape 3 exists, it feels like a very tight-knit community over the years, creating a welcoming environment for players trying to get into the game. Old school RuneScape offers a unique permanent progression system compared to WoW's often seasonal or expansion-based content system, which can devalue player investment. Because of this, it gives you the sensation that when you play RuneScape, you can always come back and have something to do. With what seems like endless content in the game and super long grinds that would take an average gamer years to complete. For WoW streamers, content was slow. They were waiting around for the next expansion while their viewers were getting impatient and or bored. When the WoW streamers started realizing there was a motherload of endless content on old school RuneScape, it was a no-brainer for them. Why sit back and wait for World of Warcraft expansion when you can play old school RuneScape and endlessly grind, giving not only their main World of Warcraft audience something new to watch, but also exciting the old school RuneScape community as they had a huge new wave of streamers they can give advice to and see experience the game for the first time. This, in my opinion, was the main contributing factor that is fueling the OSRS versus WoW debate that we're seeing today. A whole new wave of WoW players were being exposed to old school RuneScape for the first time. Players were jumping ship from WoW due to its linear progression system and content lull, while old school RuneScape was experiencing record highs in history of active players at one time. It appears that old school RuneScape for the first time in history is finally winning the debate, but how long can it last? While it has been trendy for streamers and players alike to jump on the OSRS hype train, not everyone is sold. Plenty of people have came out to defend WoW as well, saying that World of Warcraft is better due to its combat, better questing, better collectible cosmetic system, and overall polished graphics. Graphics and combat being a major factor in this conversation. OSRS for sure is an acquired taste, and regardless of the content in the game, not everyone likes playing slow turn-by-turn combat while looking like a 2D stickman from 2007. Some WoW streamers who jumped ship to OSRS have unsurprisingly already came back to WoW. It is currently trendy to play OSRS right now, and that's okay. In gaming, there will always be trends. As a gamer and streamer myself, we are always looking for some delicious, sweet content to sink our teeth in. And I do believe that that is why we are seeing this conversation pop up again in 2025. I feel like one word can describe this battle: content. Content for streamers, content for gamers, content from the developers, and consistent content injected into the bloodstream to keep the demons of real-life responsibilities away. I'm not here to tell you which one is better, World of Warcraft or RuneScape. It's up to you to decide. As a player of both for almost my whole life, I personally think both fulfill different needs and wants that I have in gaming. I love to PvE and raid in World of Warcraft. I've been a raid and guild leader since I was in 6th grade, and I still partake to this day. In old school RuneScape, I like to throw it on a side monitor and grind out some professions, clue scroll, or quests while I binge watch some shows on Netflix and Hulu. I personally love them both. If you made it this far into the video, I want to thank you. This was my first ever video essay, and I hope you all enjoyed it. Let me know if you want to see more content like this down below by hitting a like and commenting. It seriously does help the algorithm. Also, I am a full-time streamer, so catch me on Twitch streaming almost every day. I stream primarily MMORPGs, but with that being said, it's time for me to dip on out of here. Peace, later, love. I will see you guys in the next video.